All right, we have another Touch Grass podcast episode. For everyone listening in, I did practice that 10 times, and KG, I got it right this time. We have James, founder of Mode. This episode sort of sprung out of the moment. This was not planned. Mode this week launched Mode Trade, and surprisingly, it was the first time we've seen an L2 spin off into an app chain thesis realm where Mode has doubled down on one product and they're like, hey, this is going to be our star product, and we've built this ourselves. We've added a lot of AI elements into this. And we wanted to bring James on to sort of talk about the internal thought process with this sort of shift in narrative. It's not something that we've seen any other L2 do. It's probably something that we will see in the future. And this video can sort of help as a bedrock for other L2s to sort of understand James's and Mode's thought process. Yeah, James, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
For sure. I think let's start this off. Like, tell us how long you've been working on Mode, and like, tell us about the origin story for Mode.
Yeah, so I've been working on Mode since so just over 18 months. We tried to do everything pretty quickly. So I was previously very active in Ethereum community. I was an early user of multiple DeFi products, angel investing in a lot of DeFi products. And yeah, kind of running different trading strategies, farming strategies, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, essentially, I was talking to Optimism team, and we were looking at how L2s would expand and discussing how there would probably be specific L2s for specific use cases. And I said you need to have an L2 within Optimism superchain that's focused on DeFi. This is going to be the biggest unlock. So yeah, they gave us a grant, and we started to build out Mode. And yeah, we managed to very quickly kind of get Mode up and running. We launched the testnet in I think September, and then we launched the DevNet in December, and then yeah, last year in January, end of January, we launched the mainnet. So it's been live for 13, 14 months.
Yeah, and the first time, like after the Optimism grant announcement, the
Mhm.
first time I really started paying attention to Mode was during the whole restaking era. I remember the
Mhm.
infamous Renzo inflows and
Yeah.
all of the stuff that happened during that time. Talk to us about the restaking days. Like you saw all these inflows and then there were outflows. Like how was team sentiment during that time? How were you thinking about the product at that time? Take us back and walk us through it.
Yeah, so I think the amazing thing about L2s is especially OP stack L2s is you have a very trusted base layer or trusted foundation to build upon. And so our goal was to always build at the cutting edge of DeFi. And we wanted to support teams that also wanted to build at the cutting edge of DeFi. So back in the restaking days, when this hype started, we wanted to position ourselves well so people could do something different on Mode with these assets. So we had teams like Sturdy, who enabled people to loop their Renzo or Easy ETH yield bearing tokens and run pretty complex strategies. Some very high risk, some lower risk. But this is essentially what the market wanted, right? There was a huge hype, a huge amount of capital was flowing into these yield bearing assets. So we positioned the beginning of Mode, the first kind of phase, to focus in on these yield bearing assets. And yeah, we had hundreds of millions of these yield bearing assets moving onto Mode and being utilized across different protocols. And yeah, I mean, it was a good time. It was an interesting time. Um, we you know, we wanted to the purpose of Mode is to push the boundaries on these kind of things, and we built a process where we worked with Oracle providers like Redstone, who are awesome. We worked with Pith. We worked with all the teams within our ecosystem. So essentially, we could support a new yield bearing asset within like 48 hours, 72 hours, and have them integrated across the ecosystem. So yeah, as long as there was an Oracle, bridges, everything, like we'd work on the core infra and we'd be able to get like a new asset integrated. And there was a lot of demand for this. So yeah, for us, like the thesis has always kind of been like try and build like the most interesting things that people want, right? And at that point in time, everyone or like a lot of more advanced DeFi users really wanted a place to be able to leverage their positions on yield bearing assets. And yeah, at the time, like Mode was definitely one of the best places for that.
And do you think
Yeah.
like you mentioned the timing of the launch was aligning with this starting of a bull market and everyone was going risk
Mhm.
on? Do you think that kind of helped where people were ready to go on chain and put their assets to work? Was that like the perfect timing for Mode?
Yeah, I think like obviously like a lot of stuff in crypto is based on timing and like general sentiment um and yeah, hype around products. So timing is like super important, right? um so yeah, I think like that definitely helped, right? We like yeah, I think timing and also like our positioning, like we were positioned as like a DeFi L2. We had like lending protocols that people knew. um we were working closely with like the teams building these yield bearing assets. So it was like, yeah, a kind of perfect storm of things, and it enabled us to scale up like TVL very quickly. But yeah, I think like what we kind of saw is that a lot of it's like mercenary capital, right? Which isn't like necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, it like when we I think like the big switch for us is essentially when ETH upgraded to blobs and we saw like fees on L2s drop like dramatically. um a kind of different dynamic came in. Also when like TVL became like a fairly gameable metric, we saw like the market like really discount TVL as like something important. And also at the same time, we saw like L2 fees drop like by 98%. Um, so yeah, it was a very interesting time. There were like a lot of dynamics at play at the same time. So it was hard to know like what success meant at that time. Um, but yeah, it was also cool to like, yeah, be building stuff and supporting like all this kind of capital, doing like interesting stuff on chain.
Yeah. And like interesting story. I was witnessing all of this sort of unfold on the Renzo side. So I actually used
Yeah.
to work with the Connect boys, now
Oh yeah,
Everclear.
cool.
And yeah, me and Max used to sort of jam on this stuff. Talk to me about that point
Awesome.
where you realized, okay, this like mercenary capital, this restaking stuff is dying down, TVL is going away. I think the first noticeable pivot that Mode made from like a
Hmm.
DeFi chain to this yield focused chain was towards this era of like DeFi AI. So like
Hmm.
tell us about the internal conversations there. What was the light bulb moment for you guys to shift narrative?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So we focused like initially on yield bearing assets. We saw that like the demand for yield bearing assets was falling like pretty drastically. Um, this is like, yeah, due to just like different the way different teams and the way that like yeah, the way different teams kind of did certain things, the way Ethereum, um, I guess price action was moving was like negative, or like people were viewing it as like negative price action compared to other tokens. Also, like we did the Mode token launch, um, and we didn't see like the success that we wanted with that. So we really wanted to focus in on like what's like going to be next and what can we start building for now. Because when we launched like the Mode token, when we kind of went through these like past this like yield bearing asset phase into like the next phase of Mode, we wanted to think like what's going to happen next, right? What's going to be like the most important thing for DeFi over the next like, yeah, 1 to 2 years. And we focused very much in on AI. The main reason is because, our CTO at the time was had like a huge amount of background in AI. So he was previously working at AWS, doing a lot of AI stuff there, machine learning stuff. One of our advisors was building out some really incredible stuff with machine learning models. So yeah, our goal was to like refocus. And initially, when we started Mode, like one of the first things we said we wanted to build to Optimism, and also like I mentioned this in a blog article, so it's like there before we launched, was like AI agents. So we were like, okay, let's revisit what we think will be big, what we think will work, what we think will like essentially make DeFi better. And yeah, AI agents kind of came up top of the list. And at this time, like, ChatGPT was live. It was like growing pretty fast, but like AI agents weren't really a thing. This is like a year ago. And so, yeah, we ended up like giving grants to, I think, 10, 15 different teams, or like investing, and supported them with like trying to build agents. Um, yeah, that kind of was the beginning of this like next phase of focusing on like DeFi and AI. And yeah, as like random stuff started happening in the market, like this GOAT token, which wasn't really AI, but whatever, like it was a new meta. People started paying attention and going like, okay, wow, like AI is the future of like everything, right? Not just crypto, but like of every industry. There's going to be like a fundamental or like a paradigm shift in how we interact with products using AI. So yeah, it was cool to like kind of have seen that one coming.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were before, I think the real AI season where everything went vertical was from September, October last year and
Yeah.
till January, where we had this insane 4 months where every team was launching new agents, all of this.
Mhm.
But you were involved in AI before that. Did you think that the agentic economy was going to look like that? And what was your initial vision for how DeFi AI would look and what it is right now?
Yeah, so I think like my my vision of agents back then was that like they would do most transactions on chain. But it would be more like depositing to a vault or depositing to like a smart contract wallet that you control. And the agent goes off and does like DeFi tasks for you, right? So it will like stake, swap, borrow, lend, and it will just earn you yield. And as like these things were being built out, we saw that like the main thing that like a DeFi agent should do is really like manage risk, because humans are like terrible at managing risk. Um, and this DeFi agent should just like really just do the things you do, but like manage risk really effectively. Um, and as we were kind of building this out, we saw like a lot of stuff launching, which was kind of just like an LLM wrapper on top of like some really like average model that just like enables you to move, I don't know, like $10 of ETH from like A to B. And it was like not really, it was just like kind of like whatever. Um, but we did see like some really cool agents launch, like Giza launched, and they were, they have smart contract wallets that use ZKML to verify transactions. Um, that team's awesome. We worked with them early on. So like we did see like some cool stuff, but we saw like a lot of like just, I don't know. It was just like very basic stuff. And then you have like all the Twitter bots, which are interesting, but they're not really like, they don't really have a moat. So that's when we started building out Synth, because we saw like this data layer is probably going to be like a moat. The agents that have like the best models when it comes to being able to like manage risk, which essentially comes down to forecasting, and like being able to essentially take risk off the table, or like manage transactions for users before they think they need to make a decision. We saw this as like uh, the biggest kind of value add for users. So yeah, that's why we started building Synth and started to focus on like this data layer, because essentially we realized if we build any agents without this, like ability to forecast, then we have no edge. And I think this is like kind of true right now. Like any agents being built right now that do things like LP, manage like positions on lending protocols, manage run trading strategies. If they don't have a forecasting ability, then essentially like they're gonna underperform at best, and they're not gonna be able to manage risk effectively. So yeah, that's why we kind
And
of decided to build that synth.
for our
Mhm.
audience to understand that forecasting aspect, do you think like one of the AI agents on Twitter that's very popular is AIXBT, right? So do you
Yeah.
think it has that forecasting aspect where it has obviously the data layer for it is very different than all the other agents because it has a unique way of processing data? Do you think it has that forecasting aspect when it comes to just agents where it has this data and it is able to predict or like so many of what it says regards to on-chain activity and stuff? Do you think that is an aspect of forecasting when it comes to just agents?
So I think that AIXBT is like extremely good at signal generation. And you can find signal in like multiple things, right? Whether that's like social sentiment increasing, or like it's very good at taking huge amounts of information that are happening like in the world of crypto and making like a very concise overview of that so humans can act on that. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like the ability to forecast, but it's definitely the ability to generate like extremely complex signals, which most humans like can't do, right? They can't manage like hundreds and hundreds of Twitter accounts and look at what's happening across the whole space. So AIXBT is very good at like taking like a huge amount of data, giving you like a concise overview so you can act on that. But yeah, I wouldn't say like you can forecast. Like I guess the difference with synth is that like we we have a fairly complex system which like scores people's forecasts, and it's like something you can mathematically model, right? Like we're scoring volatility, and that's something you can model and you can you can score. Whereas like I think signal generation generally it's very hard to like mathematically model and score. Um and
Yeah.
I think there's
Do
like
you,
yeah, it's
do you
tough.
think AI season's going to come back? Is that sort of Mode's vision?
Yeah, I mean I think AI season is every season. Like the market's kind of like, yeah, maybe it was like overhyped initially. Um, but there's definitely a lot of interesting things being built that have like actual user value, especially like on Bittensor. In all these different ecosystems, there's a crazy amount of stuff. I think like Ritual are doing some cool stuff too. There's like so much more to be built, and there's so much more stuff, cool stuff being built. So yeah, I mean, AI season's kind of got to come back. Yeah, it has
Yeah.
to come back.
And I'll ask you a very specific question on this one, James.
Mhm.
Do you think there's like one thing that you can sort of point out to, like, hey, if Mode had this during AI season, we probably would have done a lot better during the last AI season? Is that synth, in your opinion? Like, is there like one thing that you
Mm,
guys think about internally where, like, if we had this, we probably would have done better uh, with Mindshare?
um, I think like maybe like more kind of memey stuff on chain, or more like automated agents which were like making noise on Twitter. We didn't have too many of those. We had like a couple, but they were kind of shipping late. So it was a bit like, they kind of missed the boat. Um, I think that it's very difficult to say because like I've seen teams, like good teams, also like massively struggle the last like few months. And like what they're building and what they're doing, like nothing's changed, right? Like we see this like happen quite a lot. Like nothing's really changed in like what the team is building, delivering, and like their vision. The only thing that's changed is like the market. Um, and like everyone, especially in Ethereum ecosystem, has been like massively punished because ETH price action is so bad, right? And then like yeah, when you look at like the other projects around Ethereum and like things that like people compare these other things to, like Virtual's ecosystem, like everything has kind of, yeah, it's been a struggle for everyone, I think. So yeah, I'm not sure there's too much you can change.
Yeah, absolutely. And all right, why don't we get into it? You guys have launched More Trade a few
Hmm.
days back. Why don't you tell us about what it is? And we know that Perps is one of the, if not the best business in crypto. You previously mentioned that build what users want, and as if more users are going to come on chain with protocols like Hyperliquid and stuff. Is that why you guys have kind of chosen that route? And yeah, just tell us about your thought process going into creating a Perps product.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we think about like, or the way we thought about like this transition was very much like, okay, we've invested in all these agents, and like there's multiple things agents can do. Like they can manage liquidity better in like a V3 style LP position. We could build like loads of automated liquidity tools. Um, so you deposit, and then it's just like the AI is like managing a liquidity position, right? And hopefully earning you yield, and yeah, you're not experiencing as much impermanent loss and things like that. Then there's like moving between lending protocols and managing risk on lending protocols, right? Making sure you don't get liquidated, making sure the yield you're earning is most efficient, potentially moving between protocols. And there are a few really awesome teams building that already.
Yeah,
And then the kind of third area we saw like a huge amount of potential was for agents that trade, and giving
yep,
like tools to traders, like AI based tools to traders to help them essentially get better and manage their risk way better. So we started going down this route. We started building out Synth like I think 5, 6 months ago. We've started finding Synth data was really, really useful to like essentially trade on, or use to trade on and use to manage risk. So you could ask Synth like, "Hey, I've got this position on BTC at like 85K. What's the likelihood I get liquidated?" And it'd be like, there's a 10% likelihood. Like, okay, I'm cool. I can go out for dinner. I don't need to like manage my position. Like, I don't sit at my laptop all night. Um, and Synth also like we hooked it up to an LLM. It could also start to like help people um create like trades and like conceive like different strategies. So like, okay, this is awesome. Synth really works. And we can like use it across like the mode ecosystem, this like data layer. And we spoke to like quite a few large perp dexes, and some of them were keen to like buy the data or like integrate the data. Some of them still are. And we were just like, okay, I think it would be faster if we just build all this stuff out ourselves. Um, and we spoke to the Audley team. Audley is essentially like a trading engine that we could
yeah.
integrate into like the mode app. So we were like, cool, let's do that. And yeah, it was like fairly straightforward for us to do that, which has been awesome. Working with them has been like super cool. And we have like, yeah, mode trade, then we have like all the AI tools within like the same kind of like UI. So people can switch between the two super easily. You can also through like, we have like an AI terminal, you can like, I want to go long on Bitcoin. You can do that like with natural language. So it's kind of given us like yeah, a really nice product to integrate and start to
Yeah.
like show like the power of these tools.
I think 100%. I saw a recent tweet from you that said, I tried out different AI protocols and I don't want to name them, but you tried out different similar tools that allow you to kind of uh,
Hmm.
outsource your actions to the agent. And you said that more trade is way better than them. What is it? What are those things that currently sets you apart when it comes to agents running on-chain actions? Because I have seen this trend where protocols are, before it used to be vaults, right? They're running the same vault kind of playbook where, but now the agent is managing the vault, and they're
Hmm.
calling it hedge funds. Hedge funds
Hmm.
where the agent has this guardrails and certain kind of strategy they're running. So yeah, just why don't we get into what sets Mode apart? I think you mentioned, and you tried out different tools like Wayfinder and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of awesome tools for like building transactions and executing transactions. Um, and that's like, of course, like super useful. And the whole like, where's the best place to earn yield on my ETH? And you get like 20 answers, and it's like, where do you want to put your ETH? Do you want to put it over here or over here? And you can do it super quickly. You don't have to go to UIs, all that kind of stuff. Like, there's lots of good tools for that. Or like, I want to trade into like some random meme coin. Here's a contract address.
Yeah,
Make sure like slippage is low. Like that kind of stuff, like execution stuff, like there's definitely lots of good tools. But like what we're really interested in is how to like improve like the overall trading experience. And that's where like having this like data layer that's only accessible for people, the synth data layer is only accessible for people like on mode, becomes powerful because you can start to like say, I want to do this trade. Like,
yeah,
what's the probability it goes well? What's the probability it doesn't go well? And you start to get like a better overview of how you can trade based on like probabilistic data versus just like your feeling, right? Like the majority of people who trade, and especially trade perps, don't do it successfully, right? Like I think it's like 80-90% of people lose money. And
yeah,
it's often because like they don't add a stop loss, right? They really don't think about managing risk. So like the AI terminal is kind of like, and like alongside mode trade, it's like a co-pilot, right? It's like you can ask it questions, you can get answers, and you can really start to like understand how to do better. And these are, these are the kind of data sets that you'd use if you were like running a hedge fund, right? You try to like look at forecasts, you'd look at like options prices, you'd
yeah.
essentially use these tools to make sure you manage risk much better. So yeah, I guess the goal for us is like to bring these tools to people. And we're already seeing people like really start to like, use these tools to like trade better. So that's
I
the
think,
goal. It's only been a few days since launch. So yeah.
yeah, I think one of the interesting things you mentioned is these data sets that are unique and are unique and specialized for Mode Network and people building on Mode. What are some things people can build using this particular data set? Is it more DeFi products, or is it products around the Perps exchange, or what are the kind of things? Like for example, Hyperliquid has this uh, kind of spots market separately, and
Mhm.
they're kind of building around that. Are you guys also people builders using this data set in a similar way where differently the agents are using it?
Yeah, so like we're trying to encourage builders to build like agents that essentially leverages data to help people be more successful on chain. So whether that's like integrate this data into trading strategies, um, whether it's integrating this data into like tools that people can use to like stop getting liquidated or find opportunities. Um, so we're like, mode trade is like something we're focused on, but we still have like a great ecosystem. There's roughly like 70, 80 products on mode, actively building. So yeah, like lending protocols can integrate synth data. DEXs are going to integrate synth data to help like people manage their LP positions. So yeah, there's like a lot of potential across the ecosystem, which is exciting.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to relevantly slide back into the conversation after my power cut. And I'm 100% sure KG must have asked this question already, but James, will we see some sort of AIXBT on Twitter that uses synth data to help with forecasting instead of the speculative aspect that AIXBT usually comments on?
Yeah, we've been like playing around with like ideas on this. So we were thinking of, so there's like various things which are similar to like forecasting that people currently use. So one is like fear and greed index, and this is like based on options pricing, which is fairly similar to like the volatility modeling that Synth does. Um, so yeah, we are thinking of like building an index like a daily update on like the volatility forecast, which I think can be super useful. I think Fear and Greed Index is like kind of interesting because no one really knows what it's based on, but it's kind of like a thing people reference. They're like, oh, we're in like extreme fear territory. So that means like, I don't know, we buy stuff or like we have
And
to
then
sell everything.
and then you see the Warren Buffett quotes come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're like, okay. So I mean, like building something like this that's like simple and retail friendly is definitely like going to be important. And yeah, having like a Twitter bot that just like pumps that out. But yeah, like people can go onto the Synth website, it's like synthdata.co, and they can play around with like the forecasts. And we're building out loads of tools. We currently have like some partnerships and products we're building like hedge funds and different teams in the space. So yeah, we'll be releasing those pretty soon as well.
Is that the tokenized stock stuff we're seeing on crypto Twitter right now?
Yeah, we're gonna do some stuff like we're gonna add volatility modeling, forecasting for stocks. We're probably gonna start with like S&P 500 index, like SPY, or SPX, depends like where you go, what it's called. So we're definitely going to add that in. We're also going to add in a few more cryptos to the modeling. So yeah, that's going to be fun. I mean, we've definitely seen like this big trend of like real world assets
Yeah.
coming on chain and people looking to have exposure. So yeah, we're definitely gonna try and throw our hat into the ring and build some cool stuff around this too.
And again, I think this again points back to the timing angle where tokenized stocks, I think we have seen them for in the last couple of years, but there was not at all interest for them. But right
Hmm.
now, where everyone is like tuned into this macro space, they want stocks, they're focusing on bonds, they're learning about what a bond is. So everyone's focusing on these assets that are not crypto to kind of get more exposure. So I think the timing right now is kind of
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
I think the backed Coinbase stock, like coin on backed, like
Yeah,
the PVL there and the volume there has been pretty crazy as well. But James,
yeah,
okay, so you
yeah,
guys are building a Perp DEX yourselves, right?
yeah.
There's Does that disincentivize anyone else to build a Perp DEX on mode? Now, like, have you effectively taken away one vertical of like a very successful product that every ecosystem has and been like, hey, we're gonna build this ourselves? Did you guys think about that trade-off internally while coming up with like mode trade?
So I think that's a pretty good question. So like firstly, like we built mode trade like with Audley, right? We use Audley's engine, like trading engine, which is like battle tested and essentially meant we can like move super fast. um, and get like data feedback on like how it's going versus like going away and spending like 6 months building everything ourselves, finding liquidity providers, all this kind of stuff, market makers, which is like pretty cost intensive. And yeah, it takes time. So building it with Audley has been like a good way to go. I think like we're super open to people building more perp dexes on chain. And like if they are better, we will integrate them into the AI terminal, and like mode trade would be another perp dex. But yeah, I mean, it probably does disincentivize some people from doing that, right? Um,
Got it.
I think though, what we're going to see in general is we're seeing like a new level of abstraction come along. Um, and we already kind of saw that previously, but like soon, I think being on XYZ chain won't matter. I think everyone's spoken about this for like a couple years now, right? Like
Yeah.
it's going to be like products people go for and apps people go for on a chain. And like bridging has become a lot easier. Things have become a lot easier across L2s. So yeah, our goal is really to like make sure we have a product, an app, and like core differentiation, and we build these tools to make the experience on mode much better, right? Like if you look at perps or exchanges in general, like they're the the lifeblood of like every chain. And
Yeah.
like if you look at most Perp DEXs across most chains, they're all very similar. So we want to make sure that like what we're building in Mode is very differentiated. And
Yeah.
that's where like this data layer integrating these
Got it.
tools comes into it.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is if anyone else out there wants to build a Perp DEX on Mode after this, the team is open to sort of explore the aggregator model where if your price action is better, you provide a better trading experience to the user, you can just integrate it into Mode Trade and you will work together on a partnership from that angle.
Yeah. Or like into the terminal. So like the terminal
Got it.
can like place trades on different Perp DEXs.
For sure.
It doesn't have to be Mode Trade. Yeah.
And then for the terminal, is there also a vision to sort of verticalize it? So what I'm thinking is we saw Uniswap like product, then chain. Athena, product, then chain. This first time where we're seeing like a chain and then a product. Is there appetite from the Mode team to then also build a lending protocol, for instance, or build other use cases? Is that something that you guys are talking about internally right now?
I think potentially like to partner with someone to build something like that. Yeah, that could work. I think the big problem that exists across like infrastructure is a lot of like infrastructure teams don't really know how to build products. And that's fine because it's like different skill sets. But we kind of always tried to build Mode out with like a product first approach. So we always had a dashboard where people could go see their data. We built out this like governance model, which was very much focused on like user interaction. We built this out with Aragon, like another great partner. And we had this like VE token model. So that was like token voting. This was like all in the dashboard. So Mode's always had like a product focused approach to building an L2. And this is kind of like the next step of that, right? Like we've seen like the success of teams like going with this model, for example, like Hyperliquid. And we're like, okay, you can like have like a core product that has unique features, has like core differentiation that users want. You can iterate on growing that and then build everything like else around it. And it's like very net positive, right? So yeah, that's like why we kind of refocus this approach.
Yeah. 100%. Let's talk through what the terminal experience feels like for a bit. Okay, I log into the DEX, I connect my wallet. What will I see? Is it like I have a chatbot right at the bottom where I can ask questions and I can just trade, or is it like in how like I'm envisioning like a Tony Stark where talking to Jarvis? Okay, tell me what you see on screen. What does that experience feel like? You mentioned that I can ask it the time I have entered a position here. Tell me the likelihood of me getting liquidated. So just walk me through the experience a bit from a user standpoint, from a trader or investor standpoint. What does it feel like right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very much like a chat terminal. Like you're interacting with an LLM that uses like MCP service to like essentially aggregate these different models we're using and different APIs. So when you're asking to bridge from Mode to or from Arbitrum to Mode, you can do that via the terminal. I believe we have the Symbiosis API or the Jumper API integrated, and everything runs through that, right? And you like type in what you want to do, you confirm, you then like get the pop-up in your wallet. So then you like confirm the transaction and then it's done. And the same with like Mode Trade. You can ask to like open a position, close a position, and that's executed on Mode Trade. So yeah, like right now, it's fairly simple. Like I guess the thing that like people have been testing or we've seen like early success with is people like asking Synth like, hey, I want to put on this position. What's like the probability of it doing this or this? Then they get like an answer like there's a 20% probability you'll be liquidated or it's 20% probability you'll be in profit. And then the user can decide like whether they put on that trade or not, right? But this process of like thinking probabilistically is the way like people should think about trading. And if you speak to like pretty much any top trader who's played poker, everything they do like goes through this thought process of like, yeah, this probabilistic reasoning approach to trading. So that's kind of the goal. And yeah, we've seen like a lot of people in like the mode chats like having success with like, oh, I thought I was going to do this, but now I decided I wasn't going to do that. And like that's just as valuable, because one thing we've learned is that perp dexes have this weird like there's this weird like kind of notion that like, or idea that happens like within retail or within like Twitter, that people think that perp dexes want people to get liquidated, right? And that's like, oh, like perp dexes like try and liquidate everyone, and like that's bad, and like obviously that's bad. And yeah, we should like try and avoid that from happening. But like the reality is like, actually like when you're building a perp dex, you actually want your users to continually like win and to be successful, because it's like very expensive to acquire a user. Like customer acquisition cost is high, but lifetime value is also high, right? So if someone comes, makes a bad trade, they don't manage risk effectively, and then they leave the next day, that's terrible, right? Because you've probably spent a lot to acquire that user. What you really want is someone to come on some positions, manage risk effectively, and like just get better, right, over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
For context, James,
regarding the
let me just bunt in there
yeah,
1
yeah,
second.
go
So for context, James, we do not have an editor, and the reason why this question, I did not want to ask this question, is because there is no way that this question makes sense without you adding the terminal on the screen, KG. So brother, you're gonna have to figure that out. Yeah, that's on you. That's not on me.
Yeah, I can give you a demo or like a 30
Yeah,
second
for sure. Yeah,
video of it.
we'll just append it in there.
yeah, 100%.
But I think, James, with the way that you're talking about, helping traders win, and this will eventually generate revenue, and perp dexes typically have the highest revenue source in crypto. Is there an appetite for the mode team to then switch fee accrual to the mode token? Is that the intent here? Like, is that something that the community is asking? What's sort of the thought process for the
So
linkage?
yeah, I guess like having a tool or having a product that's revenue generating is obviously great. And everyone in the space should look to like have a revenue generating application or piece of infrastructure. So this is like part of our journey towards that. We've had like multiple suggestions, and we've spoken to like multiple groups of people who have been like studying the potential of like buybacks, like how buybacks should be done. Blockworks wrote a really good piece on this. They looked at like synthetics and radiums buybacks, and they showed that like they kind of get priced in, and they don't necessarily have like that like a positive impact, or as positive of an impact as you would expect. Whereas like, or like having like this TWAP, right? There's not always like a massively positive impact, because people just like price that in very quickly. And the market doesn't necessarily like, it's just like, okay, this is just like going to be constant at this rate. So like, let's just like discount this from like the flows. Whereas like discretional buybacks, like one-off buybacks, can be like very positive for price action. So we're kind of looking at different ways to approach this, but yeah, it's definitely something we want to look at. And we're trying to understand like the best and most effective way to do this.
Yeah, I think buybacks are pretty interesting. I think instead of actual buyback, the perception of buyback creates is more important than the amount of
Yeah.
money that's being injected into the chart. Where people perceived something in the bull market or when the conditions are good, buybacks are very, very powerful. But when those buybacks are actually needed, in when the chart is there's insane sell pressure, it doesn't really help, right? So the perception of how people are thinking is very important. Like for example, Hyperliquid has this, they're just buying up with their insane fees. So I
Hmm.
think that's very important. One other thing I want to touch regarding the more trade is you guys choosing Bittensor to launch a subnet. Can you
Hmm.
guys walk me through like what is the discussion regarding that and why choosing Bittensor made the most sense?
Yeah, so like Synth is like the data layer, right? And this data powers like the forecasting ability of like the terminal and helps people trade better. Um, the reason we chose BitTensor is like BitTensor is essentially an incentive mechanism. So there's a few ways. If our goal is to have the world's best forecasting data, right? Like I always think about this in the same way that like if I want to have the world's best runner, right? There's a few different ways to do this. I could try and like ask people who the world's best runners are, and I could like hire them and put them in a room and train them and get them to run really fast, right? Or I could just hold the Olympics and be like, hey, there's a big ass prize for the world's best runner. And people from all around the world would come and compete to be the world's best runner and get the prize. And I'm like, cool, you're the world's best. So essentially, that's what BitTensor is. It's like a big competition for data scientists or um, yeah, people who like run machine learning models. And our competition is very much focused on like human expertise. So people can come, people can compete on synth, and the people with the best models will win. And the prize pool is like fairly high. It's like a few $1,000s every day. So over a year, that's like nearly $1 million. And this is enabled via like BitTensor. And BitTensor is like incentive mechanism. So, you know, you guys could start competing on BitTensor on our synth subnet. And if you win, you get paid. So essentially, like that's why BitTensor, it enabled us to very quickly start to source like the best data that's available on the market. And it's also quite cool because like we're very certain that this is the best data that's available on the market. Because if it isn't, then the person with the best data that's available on the market should just enter our competition and they should just win it every week, right? But the fact is,
Yeah,
like, they can't
it's
really
like
do that.
three data, like curve data,
Mhm.
essentially. Yeah,
Exactly.
I love to see that messaging. Love to see you tweet that out. Um, but James, okay, switching gears a little bit
Hmm.
back to like Mode Trade as a product. I won't name names, but you know there are infamous ecosystems that have in-house teams that build in-house products. They position it as like newer products. They don't affiliate it with the team. They
Hmm.
want to launch new products on the chain. They want to have new tokens on the chain. What, why, like, was that a consideration ever to sort of have another team build this out and probably launch a token for Mode Trade? What were the trade-offs and why did you decide on like, hey, we want to build this in-house instead and have the Mode brand name?
Yeah. So for us, it's like just improving like the usability of this, like alongside like the AI terminal. We want these things to like coexist. So it's very easy to like switch between the two. And having it like in one UI or like under like the mode name makes that very easy. Um, and yeah, I mean, Uh, launching tokens kind of stressful. Um, not really planning to launch anymore, to be honest, for a while. So yeah, much happier to just try and like iterate on the product, improve it, add in all these features, all these interesting tools we're doing um, around like the trading experience, right? And make that like a core differentiator. Like come trade on Mode Trade. You have like the terminal, you have all these like AI enabled tools which make the experience better and different.
That makes sense. Um, cool. I know we're closing up on the hour. I do want to ask you few final questions.
Mhm.
After this announcement, there's been a lot of positive response coming towards Mode Trade. Do you think we will see a lot more L2s spin off and sort of have this app chain type path that Mode is taking?
I think like potentially yes. I think that like typically like the last 6 months have made L2s do like a lot of soul searching because like just being an infra layer is maybe not enough for many of them. So whether that's like thinking more about where their niche is and what they incubate within that niche, maybe it's like a certain type of product. Like we've seen like some like L1s, L2s go into like DeFi. We've seen some L1s, L2s go into like further into like different types of DeFi or research on like, I don't know, different things. So I think there's been a period where like teams have had to like really think about like a new strategy and what direction they want to go, which is good because yeah, the nth L2 has to have some differentiation, right? It can't be like thousands of generalized L2s. It just doesn't make sense. Like block space is too abundant and too cheap for that to be sustainable. But yeah, whether it's like this more application layer approach that they kind of own, I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. Like some teams are great at building
Yeah.
infra and will continue to do that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a situation where they are pushed into a corner, right? Like people, there should be a reason to own the token where if in
Hmm.
fusion, even right now, where you can just pay the gas token in USDC, and that will soon become the norm where you don't need to own the native token to kind of process transactions and stuff like that, right? So to kind of have select a different path, I think it's kind of inevitable for most of these chains, and build new products and have uh, that kind of mindset kind of shift where you have to, otherwise there's no other option left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
James, did the I'm pretty sure they must have, but did the Optimism Foundation also support you in this soul finding journey that Mode has gone through?
Yeah, for sure. Optimism are like a great partner. They're very like technically focused and have helped us a lot on like technical roadmap. Um, I think that yeah, with like every ecosystem, especially like within Ethereum as a whole, we see like a lot of changes happening. I think everyone understands that like they need to be much more aggressive to compete, especially if we're looking at like competitors like Hyperliquid and Solana, right? They're probably the two biggest like alternative ecosystems. And like Arbitrum, I mean Arbitrum Optimism very much within the Ethereum community, but I think like Solana is like one that like has performed extremely well by taking a very aggressive approach, by focusing on an app layer, by focusing in on like mobile UX. And it's been like a wake up call for like a lot of builders in Ethereum ecosystem that like they need to focus way more on this. And we've actually spoken quite a lot the last few months to Ethereum Foundation and like product managers there on our approach and what we're doing. And that's been pretty cool because yeah, previously we didn't have like too much contact with them. But yeah, they're also becoming much more active in like supporting application there. So that's dope.
Wow, I didn't know that. Um, cool. No, James, I'll end with one final question.
Yeah.
We usually ask this at the end, but we cut it and put it at the front as like our clickbait. But what's your one advice to L2s that are trying to find their way in this market?
I guess like talk to users and build what they want. Um, and yeah, like keep grinding.
It's great advice. And talk to your foundations, I guess. Probably solid advice. Cool. Thanks so much for coming on, James. This is awesome. Appreciate you
Really
doing this.
appreciate it. Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much.
Really appreciate it. Cheers. Bye bye.